Hi there, I am Grace Jasmine, and I am the president of Loud Karma Productions. And we have a very exciting episode today. We are going to be meeting, and we are meeting, in fact, with Adriana Martínez Barrón. And she is the person who has won an award from us previously for her show, I Hope You're Having Fun in Hell, Dad, which is a mouthful, but it was an extraordinarily good show. And so we're talking with her today about her past projects, her upcoming projects, and a little bit about what makes her tick. Hi, Adriana. It's good to have you here.
Hi, good to see you, Grace.
Good to see you as well. It's been too long. So let's just, I got a big surprise this morning. I need to tell everyone that I got an email from Adriana today saying that she's in this year's Fringe. So there's very exciting news that we'll get to soon. But first, we want to sort of go over a little bit of your past, a little bit of your experience, and just kind of get to know you a little bit. So, to that end, give us a little Reader's Digest version of you, how you, a little bit of background, how you got involved in the theater, just sort of an overview.
So I grew up in Mexico. I grew up in Monterrey, Mexico, moved to LA when I was 23 for grad school. My
Okay.
day job is I'm a TV and film executive. I worked at production companies, network studios. I worked at Netflix for a while. I worked at CBS. I've also worked with Eva Longoria and Eugenio Derbez. I've also have worked with
And
Sofia Vergara, and I currently work for Stacey Abrams.
that's an exciting resume. And so we'll go back over that just a little bit. But that, so you've got a lot of background on the film TV side of things.
Yeah.
So what made you, now I also noticed that your grad school's at USC, was that correct? And
Correct.
what was that in exactly?
Motion picture producing, so the
Okay.
business of producing.
Okay, awesome. So you've leaned that way. So I guess the big question would be, how did you decide that theater was also a way that you wanted to artistically express yourself?
Well, the weird thing is the first thing I remember doing was theater. So my sister, I have an older sister and she's a performer. And when she was 10 and I was 5, we used to take acting classes and singing classes and dancing classes. And I've been trained in almost everything. And then when I was in middle school, my parents got divorced and nobody could take me to classes. And so I put away my creative side and got really good in school. And I was actually really good at math and I thought I was going to be an engineer. And then when I got to college, I was going to be a industrial physics engineer.
Oh
And
my gosh.
and then
Okay.
somewhere in my first semester, I had an identity crisis. I switched from engineering to communications. My school didn't even have either a film or a drama program,
Okay.
but it did have a really expensive and well-budgeted theater. And so it was more of an after school. We used to call it difusión cultural, like cultural diffusion program. And so I changed majors to communications, and was in a play every single semester for the
That's
next four
awesome.
years. Uh,
Okay, and that's through your high school education, and that was still in college or high school?
in college.
In college. So your undergrad was in Mexico, is that correct? Awesome. Okay, so then what happened when you got the big jump and came out here?
Somewhere along the way, I first did a summer at UCLA, then I did a year at the New York Film Academy, then I did filmmaking at USC, and so like my life, and I in the middle of all of that was producing TV back home, and so like my life has been moving to the film world, and
Right.
I really like stopped doing theater, stopped acting, all of that. I really hadn't seen a lot of theater in LA for a while. And
Yeah.
then about 3 years ago in 2023, during the actors and writers strikes, I lost
Hmm.
my CBS job. And so I had a lot of free time and I reconnected with my love of writing. I reconnected with my passion for theater. I started seeing a lot of theater, and that's sort of when it sparked again for me.
Oh, that's awesome. So
Yeah,
good things did happen during COVID, I guess, right? So,
yeah.
it's wonderful. Also, too, isn't it true that in your film TV career, you're mostly producing. And so it's not your work, it's the work of others. And so you're very involved on production and you're very involved in acquisition and so on, and the other parts of making it run, but not so much your own self as a creative entity. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that is correct. A lot of
Okay.
my work has been championing other people or giving notes to other people's on their work or helping them be the right show for Netflix or whatever. And so, like, I was really yearning for a medium to express myself again.
Hmm.
And theater felt like a great way to get sort of quicker feedback that was sort of affordable and also
Sure.
where I could spend time with actors.
Right, right. And then also, giving you an opportunity. One of the great things about the theater, and I think what we love about it so much, is you can, and you do bring your own art. And so as a writer, you bring your own art, which is your heart and soul, and you're able to put that out there and get that out there in front of an audience and connect in that way too. So I think that maybe is that a thing that draws you in and has pulled you to it?
Yeah, I like the idea of like in the theater, in a little bit like in television, the writer is the final say. It's
Right.
definitely a theater medium. And so having a medium to express myself where I could just write because I started this for me, it was really just an exercise in writing. It wasn't even as producing. And then to be able to see it in a like the play that I put last year, I wrote it in 2024. And so like
Mhm.
it was less than a year within the cycle of I wrote it, I staged it, I got audience reviews and it was over.
It's a full cycle, which is really cool. And so that's a good segue because that's how we met you is by you submitting, do you call anything for short? Having fun in hell, Dad. I mean, it's a long title, but I was always so taken with this show. And so this is how we met. I Hope You're Having Fun in Hell, Dad was submitted to the Loud Karma Award, and I think you placed second in 2024.
25.
25. It's all running together for me now. Okay, 2025. So in the recent past, so you've moved quickly into a new show, so good for you. So I read your script obviously and was one of the judges that selected your script, but can you kind of give us a synopsis of what I Hope You're Having Fun in Hell, Dad is about just for people in the audience?
Yeah, I hope you're having fun in Hell. That is a funeral satire about Chelsea, who would rather be anywhere else than at her father's funeral.
Right.
And she has to go to go to her father's funeral, and we get to meet her very dysfunctional family.
Right. And they're incredibly dysfunctional. And one of the synopsis points that you make in your script is you talk about the narcissism of the family. And so let's talk a little bit about your method for that. How did you come up with the idea for this script? And, what were you trying to, I guess, say? What's your thesis statement with that script?
Well, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family myself. And so for me, I think it's the complicated thing of like people can be dysfunctional and broken and also be loved. And for you,
Mhm.
like it can be hard to separate both of those things.
Right.
So it was an exploration of like this very toxic person has died and people have feelings, positive and negative feelings about this person because it shaped them
Mhm.
even though like even though it's easy to say, oh, he was toxic, cut him off, it's not just that.
Hmm. Hmm. And I notice in reading your script, one of the things I think is always true is when we have a really great script, you feel, even though we're judging the written word, and you probably know this from your own producing in television and film, when you're judging the written word and it really jumps off the page for you and you feel like you've seen it already, that's always a super good sign as far as like, this is a great script because I feel like I've been there. I feel like I've been in an audience for this already, even though I'm reading the written word. And so I really felt that with your script. And one of the things I think I'd like you to speak to is all of these different various characters because it's quite a, so how many people in the show?
It was 10 characters.
10 characters, which is kind of unheard of for Fringe, but the first time that you did Fringe was this time, right? So I love that you didn't know that that was a huge show for Fringe, so it didn't stop you. You had no idea that people would say, "Oh, 6 is the max." But I love the fact that I think we do what we don't know isn't possible. I guess if that's a sort of a backwards way of saying, I'm so glad that you took that on because it's a fascinating look at all of these people and how they come together. So, so you were looking at a dysfunctional family and building from your own dysfunctional family. So, when your family came to see this, if they did, unless they're all in Mexico, did they spot themselves and now are you out of the will?
Um, they didn't come to see it, but they did see it recording. And
Hmm.
the thing is, like, it's lightly based on it. Like, there's pieces, there's stories, there's things, but
Hmm.
in reality, like, everybody's taking a little bit to the extreme. And
Right.
so if everybody in real life is at a 5, I raise the volume to an 11 for most of.
Right, right. And that's theater. I really think that that's, that heightened sense of emotional reality, that's really theater. So I find this to be a fun, interesting, intense, emotional play. So you produced it where was it?
Produced it at the Actors Company.
Okay, Actors Company. And what was how were your audiences and what were the results?
Well, we did it at the Let Live, which is one of the bigger stages at the
Mhm.
Actors Company. It seats 80 people. We ended up doing 8 shows. We were gonna do 9, but we had to cancel one because of COVID. So we sold out 6 of our 8 shows. Um,
Good.
so it was
That's great.
a really strong audience reception. People like I was shocked because I didn't expect it. Because for me, I wrote it in, and for me, the tone is a satire, but it also has some like strong moments of emotion, especially towards the
Sure.
and people would come out crying and telling me that like it's so much like their dad. Or we had a show on Father's Day, so some girls came out to me and they were like, I need to call my dad right now. And people were like really moved. um
Good.
which it was really interesting to experience that so personally. People
Sure.
would come out after the show and tell me their own stories with their fathers and things like that.
That's fascinating. And I think also what we really try to do in theater is move people. That's a big part of it. Obviously, satire is a huge part of it as well. I write satire in my plays, political satire sometimes too. But I also think it's when you get somebody that comes to you and says, "Hey, this really was a thing for me." I think that's so powerful. So that's a cool thing that happened. Now, did you direct or you did direct. Okay, so because of your background, you've directed before.
I directed shorts before, student films, but I've never
Okay.
directed theater.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
I've,
different.
I've assisted direct. I used to do a lot of assistant directing back in college, but
Mhm.
I hadn't done directing actors in more than 15 years, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I did my play, The Masher, which is a Me Too allegory, kind of black satire. I did that at the Fringe in 2019, and I directed because I tried to find directors that would be perfect, but it was such a sensitive subject that I felt so strongly about. I ended up doing my own directing, which I had done before as well. But I do think that's a lot to take on. In addition, people say you shouldn't do it, but I'm not sure I believe that. I think there are cases where you should do it. And it sounds like you were right to do it in your case.
I think because like I was so familiar with the tone and it's a
Mhm.
tricky tone, I think it made the most sense for me to do it. And I learned a lot from it, but
I'm sure.
especially like I had really talented actors, people that are trained in TV, that are really, really, extremely talented and thoughtful. And so, like, it almost didn't feel like I was directing. I was more just guiding them, and they were inhabiting the character so realistically that I just had to be like, okay, don't do that, just do a little bit more of that, because they were coming to the table with so much already.
That's awesome. Now, because of your background, were you able to pluck from your own, your string of friends that are in film and TV and just, hey, can you help me do this? So is that sort of how you did your casting or how did
Yeah,
you do that?
Basically, my casting was I said, I'm doing a play on Instagram. These are the characters. Anyone interested? And some people started messaging me,
Right.
and I have friends who are kind of famous. Cynthia, my lead, was recurring on a Netflix sitcom. She has 300,000 followers on Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
She's
So
like
who's that actress?
Cynthia Carmona.
Okay, great.
And like she's a legit actress.
Yeah, that's good.
When Cynthia asked me to be on the show, I was like, are you sure?" And that really elevated and everybody that came in, most of the people were people I knew.
Hmm.
Two roles, two roles were a friend of a friend's. Somebody like read it and recommended some people because I was having trouble casting the mom. And then a couple of roles, I have two young girls. The young girls came from Actors Access, and one other
Hmm.
character came from Actors.
Hmm. So because you're so well connected, you were able to do it through really almost word of mouth. I used Backstage and ended up just doing regular auditions, which ended up being very, very great for me. I had my lead was somebody I knew that I kind of, when I wrote the show, I had them pegged as sort of, this is who this is, so I ended up getting that person. But I think it's so great. Fringe is a place where everybody comes together and, there's a collaborative, which is so cool. And also it's cool that you're very, very working actress who's in film and TV, so was she non-equity? How did you work that?
Was non-equity. Like because all of my cast members, they were SAG but not equity.
Right,
It worked out the like we could do, but I had planned, I was prepared to go equity 99 seat house if necessary.
right,
And I ended up paying everybody around the same quote. But I did a flat fee instead of like weeklies.
right.
But I was prepared in case anybody in the cast ended up being equity. I was prepared to do that. But
So
it just
that's great.
happened that nobody was.
Right, right. So it's funny because when you're dealing with Fringe and you're self-producing and you're self-directing, there's still so many, it's like a dog and pony show that you do everything on your own and you do all of it. And I think it's so important. I paid my actors. I think it's so important in theater, especially on this level of theater, that we do, if at all possible, everybody needs to be compensated on some level, for however you can do it. Just because I think that we devalue artists have a tendency, especially in theater, to devalue their work. And I think it's important to hold that up as a thing that you do. So that's really cool that you did that. That's awesome.
It was important for me to show like the respect and honestly like the fact that so many people decided to join, the train and come in this adventure with me that I did some sort of gesture
Sure.
in return. And
Yeah.
that's why a 10-person cast for Fringe is really difficult.
Right, right. It can't, well, depending on your funding and what you've got, going for yourself to bring in as funding, because it can be very expensive. Or I've also seen, shows do it on the cheap. They get everybody to do it for free who are friends, and they direct themselves. And so there's a way to do it cheaply, but I feel like I didn't come in that cheaply either. And
Right.
you just have to do what works for you, I think. So that's very important as well. So let's segue from that show, which was a fascinating and fun, interesting show that we loved, which obviously got an award from us. And let's talk about your motivation as a writer. So you sort of got back to the heart of you as a writer during the lockdown, during the COVID years. But what's your process? How do you come up with ideas? How do you work? Kind of just talk about you as a writer.
I went to a book company retreat a couple months ago, and they had this little test of like, what animal writer are you? And like they were giving stickers. And I did the little test and it came up that I'm a horse. And that
Oh, okay.
and what that means is I'm a very busy person and I write in big spurts. And so like I might not be able to write every day. I might not be able to write every week, but when I write, I will write a lot. And so
Right.
for me, like I was writing a new thing, a historical play that I was working on last year, and I pretty much wrote it between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
because that was all the time that I had. And so like for me, sometimes I struggle to come up with ideas, or sometimes like ideas come up pretty quickly. For example, I hope you're having fun in Hell Dad. That was for I wrote it for a playwriting class that I was taking in Theatricum Botanicum, but that was originally a monologue of it started with a monologue. The opening monologue was something I had for an indie film that I was gonna write 10 years ago and
Oh,
never.
that's interesting.
Um,
Huh.
so when the teacher was like, write something, I was like, I guess let me go back to my list of ideas that I haven't explored. And I wrote
Right.
that one out. And so like it was an idea that was supposed to be a film that I turned it into a play. Um, and so like it's coming up with the ideas I think is the hardest thing for me.
Right. Right. I agree with
It
that.
itself is pretty quick once I get
Hmm.
the time to do it.
Hmm. And so, on that note, because as a playwright myself, and I also write other things, sometimes there's an idea that you just grab and you don't know how you got it, but you've got it, it's fully formed. And then other times you're like, oh my gosh, if I could just think of anything. So where are you with that? And how do you make yourself, how do you create a mindset that gets those ideas going, I guess? How do you get
I
that happening?
I think. I think this is where being really busy is a bad thing because I think for you to be receptive, if you believe in universe inspiration
Sure,
and that
sure.
ideas are floating, I think you have to be a little bit open and receptive and like reading things that are outside your, comfort zone or whatever. But also sometimes just like, you're going through something big and that's what inspires you to write a piece.
Right, right. And I do think I think it's elusive. Sometimes it's there, at least in my experience, sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not.
It's
So,
not.
and I do think that's an interesting point you make about sort of being receptive, or, I'm hearing that as listening, maybe just opening yourself to what's around you, and being, ready to have something catch your interest almost.
And also have the time to explore it because like
Right,
if you believe Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic talks about how like ideas come to you and if you don't take that idea in that moment, the idea is gonna float away and go somewhere else.
right.
Um,
Isn't that true?
3 years ago, I like when I was in my writing retreat, I was like, I really want to write a feature about this Mexican historical figure. And I ordered all the books and I didn't make time to do it. And I moved on and I was writing something else and I got distracted with a different project. And I finally was exploring this character in a play last year. And as I was decorating my script, adding pictures because I wanted to have pictures between chapters, um, I realized that they made a show in Mexico about this political figure or
Oh my
historical
gosh.
figure. And I was like, if I had only written the movie when I wanted to write the movie, I would have been
Right.
ahead of the TV show, but now I'm too late. Um,
Yeah.
so like if you don't pursue an idea when the idea comes to you, the idea will move on.
And I there's so much truth to that. I think that if you even get a great title, and I've found that to be true. You get a title, and then I've always told people, keep your titles to yourself. And actually, at the early stages, keep your ideas to yourself, because if you if you get it out in the universe, somebody will come up with a title for the book or the script or the screenplay or whatever. All of a sudden, you'll go, well, they've got that title. And I was like, how did they get it? I thought it was so original. But, I do think that ideas manifest like that and do float around. And you got to like grab them out of the universal energy, possibly. So that's fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about what motivates. A lot of writers think that they're trying to say something. Like there's a big message, an ultimate message they'd like to get across. So if someone's doing your biography in, 20 or 30 years, and they say, this is what this person, Adriana was trying to get across this thesis statement. This is what she was about. What would you say that big thing is that you'd like to convey to audiences?
I think. if, in the future somebody's writing about my work, they'll be like the themes that Adriana explores in her writing are um, complicated families of all kinds,
Hmm.
birth families, chosen families, work families, but like exploring the complicated relationships within those structures and how no matter how toxic, there's also love. I think like a lot of my writing comes from like there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of love and love
Interesting.
wins, like because I come from a hopeful place generally.
All right, I agree with that, and I feel like that is a very, first of all, any truth in theater is so powerful, and I think that we're all there to have truth expressed. But I do think that that hopeful place, as far as an audience member and a writer, I'm not, tragedies are not that appealing because we have the tragedy of everyday life, and it's uh, right now it's huge. And so think a hopeful place ultimately is something that we can say, okay, that's inspiring, or there's something we take away from it, where we connect and we feel it, but yet we also feel like all is not lost. So we're past the dark night of the soul and we move forward to something that we can feel a little bit good about. So that's awesome. And so, Adriana, on that note, let's delve into the new work a little bit. I don't, to the degree that you don't want to give spoilers, but to the degree that I want to talk about it. So tell me, what is the new play called?
The new play is called Wedding Party,
Okay.
or Why You Shouldn't Invite Former Friends to Your Wedding.
And I'm going to say that you are the person who likes the long titles. That's got
And
to be we're putting that in your bio too. All right. Anyway, so what is that about and where is it being staged and just some details?
so Wedding Party is about Jimena. Jimena's getting married to the perfect guy in the perfect wedding in a freaking castle in the south of France.
Oh
Everything
gosh.
exactly like she's dreamed of since she was a little girl,
Mhm.
except not everything is perfect. Because four people are not coming to Jimena's wedding, her best friend from high school, her former roommate, and her girl gang from her 20s. And so
They're not coming.
they're not coming. And so she goes on a journey to reconnect with this four women who were very important to her once,
So her bridesmaids are not coming, basically.
basically. And
Oh,
so
wow.
and so she goes on this journey to reconnect with them and try to convince them to come to the wedding.
Does it have like a traveling pants vibe somehow, in a way, or?
A little bit, yeah. It's definitely like exploring chapters of your life and how
Right.
people that have fallen off and why, but also there's a big structure of like following the couple because like Jimena's doing all these crazy things, trying to pursue her former friends and things keep escalating, and
Hmm.
that puts pressure on a relationship.
Oh, sure. Sure. Now, let me ask you this, because the first thing I haven't obviously read it yet because you haven't submitted it yet, but the application is live, by the way. I want to tell you. Um, I'm feeling like it goes through time a little bit. Do you jump back into different times, or are you just finding people and reconnecting that way?
Finding people and reconnecting in that way. We do hear a lot of what happened, but it's more through present and conversation versus through seeing it in the past.
Interesting. Okay. Well, and so it's going to be is it once again at Actors Studio?
It's once again at the Actors Company.
Okay. And are you going with the big theater again, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, it's also a big theater.
Mhm.
Biggish cast, six characters this time instead of 10.
Mhm.
So also a
They
large.
got to you, huh?
Yeah. No, I mean the truth is both of these two pieces I wrote before I ever staged the previous one.
Mhm.
So it's just this one that's
Oh,
what
just
I
happen to
wrote.
be a little bit smaller cast. Well, I think this is a really interesting idea. So, have you cast yet? You probably cast and you're in rehearsals, I would imagine.
We're almost fully blocked. We just have three more scenes to block,
Oh my gosh.
which we're doing this Sunday, and then we can start running it front to back. Um, it's I'm very proud. I once again cast almost entirely Latinas in every single
Oh, you
role.
did? Okay, cool.
Yeah, the only one who's not Latina is our male lead is white, and he was written white originally, so that was on purpose. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, we have a very diverse group of actresses, and my stage manager also happens to be Latina, so another Latino power project.
That's awesome. That's really, I think that's an important thing in Fringe, and it's an important thing in all of the arts. And certainly that's what Loud Karma speaks to, making sure that people are represented. And so I think that's an important part of your work as well. And so that's really cool. Is this a comedy?
Again, I think it travels that line between dramedy and drama. There's definitely scenes that are very funny, and there's
Mhm.
definitely scenes that break your heart. I would say it's more tonally in the world of a dramedy or a rom-com.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. And how long is it running? Do you even know yet? You think you're at 90 minutes?
It's gonna be 90, 95, something around there.
Okay. Yeah, it's I think that's a big challenge at Fringe to go full length. Was your previous show full length as well? I think it was, right?
Yeah.
That's a challenge, but I think that you're a person who likes challenges. That's one of the things I get from you.
It's not that I like challenges, it's that like I think I said this on a French panel the other day. It's more the delusion and the misinformation because I hadn't done a French show before. I submitted or I decided to stage a play that I wrote as a
Right.
full-length play that I wrote as a play.
I think before we know our limitations, I think we do some of our best work. I mean, when I was in my very early 20s, I took a musical to New York City and produced it off Broadway because I had no idea that I wasn't allowed to do that or couldn't do that. So I did that. But I do think that I like the unawareness because I think in some ways, if you're an old jaded, you've done it a million times and it's like, the limits and this and that. I think limitations hurt theater too. So, and probably hurt every project in the arts. So good for you that you're doing that. I love it a lot. So let's ask a couple more questions. So if you were talking to somebody who wanted to be a playwright, so let's say a young person or somebody who was just sort of taking off possibly from another genre, what would you give them as far as advice or support?
Um, I think for me, coming from a more TV and film world, the thing that I've really needed to understand about playwriting was understanding the classics. Like watch as many plays as you can see so that you
Right,
understand what can be done and what cannot be done with the medium.
right. Um,
Because like there's so much like amazing things that can be done with the with theater as a medium. And
sure.
I'm very lucky. Part of my job is reading writer samples, and a lot of the writers that I read sometimes happen to have come from playwriting. And so what I generally discover is that the people that are mostly moved by their work are playwrights.
Right.
I read It's Coming to LA Soon, Primary Trust last year, and
Mhm.
that play just crushed me. And so, like, just as much as new writers can do, read other people's work, see as much work as they can. That can be really helpful.
Right. I agree with that. I also think that there's something to be said for the freedom in theater that we might not have in other script forms. I think sometimes things are more formulaic, and even though certainly you can go with formula in the theater, I think there's this vibe that, anything can happen in the theater.
Anything can happen. And I have a little writers group with some of my executive friends that we, share shorts and pilots and whatever we're working on. And whenever they read one of my plays, they're like, I don't know how to note this because I don't understand the format of theater. And I was like, because there's no like you can do whatever you want. Because you can like sometimes you can do this, sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can play with lighting, sometimes you cannot like whatever the language is of your play, you establish it and then that's what you play with.
Right, right. And I think through that too, there's a lot of emotional freedom that also happens. And so then you can, I had a playwright instructor at my master's, and he was always talking about going from the big thing and then synthesizing it. So, which is not how you work in other forms of script writing. So he had this sort of loosey goosey, first you get all these things and then you pull them in and suddenly you'll have form, which is a different way to work and not relaxing. For some people probably don't like that way of
I
working.
So
Yeah,
like my approach to filmmaking and TV is you write a story area, you write an outline, you write a script, you know where you're going. And my
sure.
playwriting teacher,
It's
who's
almost linear.
very linear
Mhm.
and very structured, and my playwriting teacher is exactly the opposite. He's a playwright called Bernardo Cubria, whose work is fantastic, and I fell in love with a few years ago. And Bernardo is like, just write. Doesn't matter what you're like, just write.
Right,
You'll figure it out in the rewrite. And I'm like, but I need to know, like, I need
right.
to know what my ending is. I cannot just like start writing and I need to know what my scenes are and I need to know where I'm going. He's like, no, just get in the he calls writing like driving to Vegas. So like get in the car to Vegas and just drive. And I'm like, no, no,
Oh,
that's
it sounds.
what I can do.
Oh, that's funny. It sounds like our two playwriting professors would probably get along well with each other because they're coming from the same place. And my background, for example, I started out, well, even though I started out as an actor and then I started out writing musicals and plays, then I segued for a very long time into writing nonfiction books. And so, nonfiction books, if there's anything that's linear, it's a nonfiction book. So, I did many, many books in nonfiction and then got back, and spent years and years writing again in theater. So, I think it's such a different thing, but so you're probably an outliner. Is that right? I love outlining. So I think that that's important for you as well.
Yeah, I definitely did. And like for example, for wedding party, it was very clear to me like what needed to happen.
Hmm.
I think almost every scene was already pretty much outlined. Maybe one at some point I was talking to my therapist and she was like, I think you need this to like emotionally close the loop. And I was like, you're right. So I added one scene. But generally, like wedding party was really structured. For I hope you're having fun and hell that that one came more from like character. And so I was just hearing people talk. And then at some point I got stuck and I was like, I don't know what to do. And that was around the midpoint when the mom does the crazy thing. And so like that gave me the fuel to get through the
Oh,
rest.
that's interesting. I think we all get stuck in the midpoint. That's an easy place to get stuck. And another thing that is interesting that you said something about your therapist helping you close the loop. I've been noticing the playwrights that I'm talking to, everybody, the therapists do not realize how much of a part they're playing in the creation of plays, but they are. So, that's an interesting part of it too. So that's awesome. So, that I think we're kind of at the end of our conversation. Can you think of anything else that you might want to mention? I certainly hope you're going to apply for the Loud Karma Award.
I am. I just filled all of my I just filled the applications and you the script. I
Oh,
can't
you did.
wait to read it. I can't
Oh,
wait to
hooray.
read it. It's a play that I'm really extremely proud of. I think it does a lot of things at the same time. It's a story about female friendship breakups and
That's
it's
awesome.
how we don't talk about how painful it is for a woman to lose a woman friend
Oh, no
because
kidding.
it's way more painful than breaking up with a guy
Hmm.
and you don't get the same sympathy. Like
Isn't that true?
I got broken up with last year right at the beginning of French by my boyfriend and
Oh,
everybody was like, "Oh my God, poor you, blah blah blah." And we hadn't dated that long. We had dated for maybe six.
God.
But when I had a fallout with my most important friend many years ago, I couldn't tell anybody. And it was so embarrassing. And I had nobody to confide because if I told people, it might become like a thing that I was talking bad about her and I didn't want to do. It's like it gets so complicated to lose a
Mhm.
female friend, and they're way more important in shaping who you are as a human.
Right. And also, way more supportive, possibly. I mean, there's a level, or maybe it's a different kind of support, but the person that you can tell anything to, or the person that is always going to hear your story. And I do agree with that. I do think that as a society, we're set up to, we're sorry for people who lose their partner, whatever way that might be. But this is an interesting and important story. I like that you have a sisterhood vibe, which is also very important. And I don't think it's done enough. And I think it's fascinating and cool. And you don't see it that often in plays. You see it more in film, possibly. But I really love that you're bringing that. So that's
Yeah.
exciting.
And I'm excited that like, again, I love writing about being a Latina because that is the experience that I have in the world.
Sure.
But I like writing about being a Latina where being a Latina doesn't matter. And so for me, what I'm very proud of in this play is like I cast five Latinas as friends, and we mentioned here and there some issues with like, you know, language or traveling or going back to Mexico or things like that. But nothing is about like their experience. Like it's not about gentrification, it's not about immigration, and it's not about getting deported. It's just about being women in the world struggling with friendships like any other woman.
Right. And that's really what the world is, except for the fact I think we're surrounded by weirdness every day in our society here. And that's not really what's really happening. What's really happening is people are friends and people are lovers and people are partners and people are families and that's what the important thing is. And I feel like you're really capturing that in your work. So I'm so glad you're bringing that. It's very important.
And like I think for me, like I as coming from the TV and film world, I feel like really frustrated that the industry has like said, okay, we can do this story from them. As long as it's a border crossing story, as long as it's like some drug story, or as long as it's a gentrification story about like various
Yeah,
like small families in East LA. But like there's so many other ways of being a Latino and like
right. That's just bigotry.
yeah.
Let's call it what it is. The fact that that's the only stories that they want to produce about a whole culture to me is, you know, it's insanity. And it's another part of why Loud Karma does, we do what we do, because it's so important for people who are not getting their stories told to be able to tell their stories. So I'm glad that it goes that direction because I think that's an important way to go.
And that's why like Fringe has been so great for me because it's like, okay, I cannot go the traditional studio route to get a story like this produced, and they probably will not greenlight my rom-com with two Latinos anytime soon, but I can do it in theater.
Good for you. That's awesome. So, we're excited to see your work and I'm thrilled you're back. And you know, it's such a nice thing because today we were talking and I got on there to make sure you had the link. I was like, oh my gosh, she's back. Hooray. So this is our conversation with Adriana Martinez Barrón. And she's a playwright that not only won an award from us, but is also in this year's Holiday Fringe with the Wedding
Wedding.
Party. Wedding party, and you'll have to go to the Fringe website to see the long title. Anyway, so we're going to stop talking on the recording now, but stay with me, and I want to talk to you after. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's see if we're stopped. We're stopped. Hi, are you still with me?
Yes, I'm still
Okay.
here.
Okay, that was awesome. So I will let you know when it's going to be live. What we're doing is we're premiering our whole podcast is going to premiere in June as sort of like a fun thing that is happening in accordance with Fringe. And
Perfect.
so I will let you know when